Benjamin Bunny.
The Tale of Benjamin Bunny by Beatrix Potter.
Wait.
One morning, a little rabbit sat on a bank. He pricked his ears and listened to the clip-clop of a pony. A carriage was coming along the road. It was driven by Mr. McGregor, and beside him sat
Daddy.
Mrs. McGregor in her best bonnet.
Daddy.
Yes.
Well, this one is Mr. McGregor.
Yep, it's the same Mr. McGregor.
That one and this one.
Yep. As soon as they had passed, little Benjamin...
But it's just not the same.
But it's the same Mr. McGregor. It's the same bunnies.
Yeah. Same Mr. McGregor, but it's not the same Mr. McGregor doing stuff. He's doing that.
Yep.
But in that story, he's picking stuff.
Yep, okay. Little Benjamin Bunny slid down into the road and set off with a hop, skip, and a jump to call upon his relatives who lived in the woods at the back of Mr. McGregor's garden. That wood was full of rabbit holes, and in the neatest, sandiest hole of all lived Benjamin's aunt and his cousins, Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. Yes.
And that's Dapper.
Yep, old Mrs. Rabbit was a widow. She earned her living by knitting rabbit wool mittens and muffetees. I once bought a pair at a bazaar. She also sold herbs, rosemary and tea and rabbit lavender.
Wait, is that tea?
Yep, well, that's probably lavender. Yep.
Wait, is that tea?
Well, that's one of the bunnies.
Wait, is that tea?
No, that's probably Mopsy.
Is this tea?
No.
There's what?
This is tea probably in the packaging.
Oh.
Little Benjamin did not very much want to see his aunt. He came sneaking around the back of the fir tree and nearly tumbled on top of his cousin Peter. Peter was sitting by himself. He looked poorly. He was dressed in a red cotton pocket handkerchief. "Peter," said little Benjamin in a whisper, "who has got your clothes?" Peter replied, "Oh, the scarecrow in Mr. McGregor's garden." And he described how he had been chased about the garden and he had dropped his shoes and coat. Little Benjamin sat down beside his cousin and assured him that Mr. McGregor was gone out in the carriage, and Mrs. McGregor also, and certainly for the whole day, because she was wearing her best bonnet. Peter said he hoped that it would rain. At this point, old Mrs. Rabbit's voice was heard inside the rabbit hole, calling, "Cottontail, Cottontail, fetch some more chamomile tea." Peter said he thought he might feel better if he went for a walk. They went away, hand in hand, and got up on the flat wall looking into Mr. McGregor's garden. Peter's coat and shoes were plainly seen on the scarecrow, topped with an old hat of Mr. McGregor's. Little Benjamin said, "It spoils people's clothes to squeeze under the gate. The proper way to climb in is to climb down the pear tree." Peter fell down head first, but it was of no consequence as the ground below was nicely raked and very soft. It was sown with lettuce. They had left a great many little footmarks all over, especially little Benjamin, who was wearing clogs. Little Benjamin said the first thing to be done was to get back Peter's clothes, in order that they might be able to use his handkerchief. They took the clothes off of the scarecrow. It had rained during the night, and there was water in his shoes, and the coat had shrunk somewhat. Benjamin tried on the hat, but it was way too big for him. Then he suggested that they should fill the handkerchief with onions as a little present for the aunt. Peter did not seem to be enjoying himself. He kept hearing noises. Benjamin, on the contrary, was perfectly at home and ate a lettuce leaf. He said that he was in the habit of coming to the garden with his father to get lettuce on their Sunday dinner. The name of little Benjamin's papa was old Mr. Benjamin Bunny. The lettuce was certainly very delicious. Peter did not eat anything. He said he should like to go home, and he dropped half the onions. Little Benjamin said it was not possible to climb back up the pear tree with a load of vegetables, so he led the way boldly to the other end of the garden. They went on a little walk on planks under a sunny red brick wall. The mice sat on the doorstep, cracking cherry stones. They winked at Peter Rabbit and Little Benjamin Bunny. Presently, Peter let the pocket handkerchief go again.
Daddy, guess what?
What?
In Peter Rabbit, there's pictures of Peter Rabbit in Mr. Garden. But isn't that part that he say, "Stop these"? No, it's just him eating the things. Yeah, that's what it looks like.
The bunnies got amongst the flower pots and frames and tubs. Peter heard noises scarier than ever. His eyes were as big as lollipops. He was a step or two in front of his cousin, and he suddenly stopped. This is what the little rabbits saw around that corner. A cat. Little Benjamin took one look, and then, in half a minute less than no time, they hid themselves and Peter under the onions underneath a large basket. The cat got up and stretched herself out. She came over and sniffed at the basket. Perhaps she liked the smell of onions. Anyway, she sat down on top of the basket. She sat there for 5 hours. I cannot draw you a picture of Peter and Benjamin under the basket because it was so dark and because the smell of onions was dreadful. It made Peter Rabbit and Little Benjamin cry. The sun got around behind the woods, and it was becoming quite late in the afternoon, and still the cat sat upon the basket. At length, there was a pitter-patter, and some bits of mortar fell down from the wall above. The cat looked up and saw old Mr. Benjamin Bunny prancing along the top of the wall of the upper terrace.
Wait, is that also old Mr. Bunny?
Yep, that's Benjamin Bunny's dad. He had a bit of lavender in his mouth, and he had a little stick in his hand, and he was looking for his son. Old Mr. Bunny had no opinion whatever of cats. He took a tremendous jump off the top of the wall, right on top of the cat, and knocked it off the basket, kicking it into the greenhouse and scratching a handful of fur. The cat was too surprised to even scratch back. When old Mr. Bunny had driven the cat into the greenhouse, he locked the door. Then he came back to the basket, took his son Benjamin out by the ears, and gave him a little spanking with the stick. Then he took out his nephew Peter, and he took out the handkerchief of onions and marched them all out of the garden. When Mr. McGregor returned about a half an hour later, he observed several things which surprised him. It looked as though some person had been walking all over the garden in a pair of clogs, only the footmarks were too ridiculously little. Also, he could not understand how the cat could have managed to shut herself inside the greenhouse and lock the door on the outside.
Daddy, what's the thing that's there?
When Peter got home,
Daddy.
his mother forgave him because she was so glad to see that he found his shoes and his coat. Cottontail and Peter folded up his pocket handkerchief, and old Mrs. Rabbit hung up the onions from the kitchen ceiling with the herbs and lavender. The end.